webinar. This is part of the community support webinar series that AsIAm has been running throughout COVID-19 with the kind support of SuperValu. As you might be aware, in normal times, AsIAm provides community support seminars across the country through SuperValu sponsorship, addressing a range of issues important to the autism community, from anxiety and sexuality through to making friends and managing in school and getting a job. Throughout COVID-19, we've been looking specifically at some issues that maybe families are encountering at present, or might be beginning to think about as we look ahead, hopefully, to the return of school and the return to some degree of normality come September. Just to start with some housekeeping for this evening's webinar. The webinar will last approximately 1 hour, and that will consist of a 50-minute presentation and then a questions and answers session. At any stage during the webinar, if you have a question, you can type it into the Q&A box. And at the end of the webinar, I will select a selection of questions to put to our speaker here this evening. If we don't get to your question, hopefully it will have been covered in the webinar itself, or you can certainly get in touch with either AsIAm or I'm sure the Cara Centre afterwards if you want any further information. And we hope you find tonight useful and helpful. The webinar is being recorded, and the purpose of this is for people who aren't able to attend live but still wanted to access the information. Nobody bar the panelists are visible in the video, but what we would ask is, in submitting your questions and answers, to remove any identifiers, be it a child's name, the name of a school, the name of a sports club. If we can keep the questions general, that would just be helpful from a privacy and a confidentiality point of view. Tonight, we're delighted that we're addressing the topic of keeping children with additional needs active this summer. And we really feel this issue is central to both supporting people managing during the summer months, but also hopefully in helping people return to school as well. Certainly in the work that AsIAm does, the topic of anxiety is something that comes up again and again and again. And we know that exercise can play a major role in managing that anxiety. Throughout COVID-19, a topic that's come up a lot has been self-regulation. People finding it hard to manage their emotions, people finding it hard to deal with the sensory environment. And once again, outdoor activity can play a huge part in making that more manageable, as well as teaching key skills like social skills and like coordination and fine motor skills, which would be really helpful for the return to school. So we're delighted to bring this webinar to you this evening. And once again, we're very grateful for SuperValu's support in making that possible. We're really delighted that we've been able to bring a subject matter expert to you this evening to talk on this topic, because believe me, sport is not a topic you want to hear me talking about, or you'd learn much about if I was talking about. But the Cara Centre for Inclusive Sport is based in IT Tralee, and over the last number of years, they've done really fantastic work in opening the doors of sports clubs across the country to children with a variety of additional needs, including autism, by training coaches and by showing how you can make sports more accessible and inclusive for all. AsIAm is delighted to have a very positive and close working relationship with the Cara Centre, and we're delighted this evening that Odhrán Doherty, who is the Sports Inclusion Coordinator for the Cara Centre, is going to talk us through how we can keep children with additional needs active this summer. So thank you so much for giving up your evening, Odhrán, and I'll hand over to you to start your presentation whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Adam. Great welcome there, and good evening to everyone. Delighted to be here. Fantastic opportunity for ourselves to present tonight, and I'm really looking forward to connecting with you, and hopefully it'll be an enjoyable evening for you. I'm just going to share my screen here, so hopefully this will work. So hopefully you should be able to see that. Okay, guys, so thank you very much again, as I said, for inviting me along tonight. As Adam said, the presentation will take around 50 minutes to complete, and then we'll have time, hopefully, for some Q&A at the end as well. A little bit about me as we begin. So I'm originally from Donegal, in the northwest of Ireland, and I've moved to Newry, so I'm based in Newry now at the moment, and I've lived here for the last 7 years. My education, so I have a degree in Health and Leisure Studies from Queen's University in Belfast, which I graduated in 2008. And after my graduation, then I worked for Donegal GAA up until November 2011, and I worked as a Games Development Officer in the county. And that would involve getting into schools and clubs and providing activity for them. In a mainstream setting, but also with children with additional needs as well. And then just prior to London 2012, I moved to Disability Sport in Northern Ireland, based in Belfast, which is an organisation similar to Cara. And I would have worked there mostly with people with physical disabilities in performance pathway work and some club development work as well. And then last year I joined Cara in April 2019 as a sport inclusion coordinator, in a role to support the local sports partnerships and the sport inclusion disability officers within that, which I'll speak a little bit about later. And they're a real opportunity for you to engage in sport at a local level. And I suppose my family, I have 2 young children, a 2-year-old and a 5-month-old who was just born prior to lockdown. So she's had a really interesting start to her life. What I'm hoping to cover tonight with you is a little bit about Cara. I suppose I'm not sure if you know anything about the organisation, what we do, so I'll hopefully cover a little bit about that at the beginning. We look at the benefits of inclusive physical activity in sport, and particularly around the physical and psychological benefits of that as well. Provide you with some strategies to support and motivate children and teenagers to take part in sport and physical activity. And then hopefully provide you with some options where you can find local opportunities and maybe the pathway for you to do that. We look at some examples of suitable activities that may be suitable for your children, and then some tools. And I think this is important, that we look at maybe some tools that coaches and activity providers could use to make the experience for your child more positive in whatever setting they provide that opportunity. Where you can go for further information, and then obviously then the Q&A at the end. So about Cara, so we're a national organisation. We're based in IT Tralee, and we also have a base in the sports campus in Dublin, where I'm based myself. And I suppose our vision is putting disability sport and inclusive physical activity at the heart of our nation. I think that's a really powerful statement. It's something we're working towards every day in collaboration with organisations like AsIAm and national government bodies of sport as well. And the key goals that we have are to increase the opportunities for people, to facilitate the voice, so listen to what people are saying with a disability and try and act on that in interactions. Then enhance the quality of the experience that people are having through training education and providing advice to activity providers. The key partners that we work with are Sport Ireland, so they would be definitely our key partner. The local sports partnerships, national government bodies of sport, the various disability sport organisations, which for example would be Special Olympics Ireland, Vision Sport Ireland, Irish Wheelchair Association. The National Disability Organisation, so for example AsIAm would be one of those, the HSE, and then our corporate sponsor then would be Hyundai. Some of the projects that we are involved in, so I'm Into is a project that we deliver, and that's where we listen to the voice of people with disabilities and what they're saying and what they would like the physical activity and sports space to be. That's one of the really important initiatives that we run, and I suppose it shapes quite a lot of the work that we deliver as well. The Disability Charter is across 5 key pillars that, again, that's coming out of the I'm Into project, where they've identified 5 key areas that they would like people within the sports industry to consider. So they're open, that would be openness, promotion, facilities, activities, and the development of people. And at the moment, we nearly have 400 organisations across Ireland who have signed that charter and are working towards implementing I suppose the 5 key areas of that charter as well. The other areas I'm not going to touch too long on them. So National Seminar for Inclusion, we deliver that every year, and that will happen this year at the end of November, and it'll be an online seminar as well. Campabilities, which is a residential camp for children with visual impairments. Fit for All, which will happen in October, which is a project working with leisure centres across the country to increase opportunities. And then we also have our National Inclusion Awards, where we recognise good practice within the inclusion industry. The first thing, I suppose, is why is physical activity and sport important? So why is it important for me as a person, for everyone on tonight? And we all have different reasons for that. And I suppose when we break that down into the specific area of inclusion, it becomes even more important, and the type of activities become important as well. The same reasons that we engage in physical activity and sport will be the same for a person with a disability, but they may have additional benefits that they may accrue from it, taking part in sport and physical activity as well. So to touch on some of the key ones, so it provides the opportunity to learn about how to make friendships, but also to develop that friendship again and how to work with others. So it provides that environment for cooperation, friendship, and a kind of shared learning as well. And increases self-confidence, acquiring skills, being part of a team, achieving something as a group as well. Learn about leadership skills, and again, you can take that into everyday life. A lot of the skills I would have learned in terms of leadership and confidence would have came through sport, and I wouldn't have got that opportunity anywhere else. Learn to deal with disappointment, and I think that's important that children particularly at a young age, are able to deal with disappointment in a safe environment, and that can be possible through sport. Support socialization, communication development, and independence skills. Again, with support from coaches, parents, and activity providers who are aware of the issues that a child may have who has additional needs. I think also then it's important to note that it increases the awareness of inclusive sport. I think that's important if we're looking to increase the opportunities within Ireland, but also then to increase the quality of the opportunity at a community level. I suppose the benefits, key benefits again, and I suppose we'd be aware of a lot of these already. Obviously provides you with more energy, healthy heart, opportunity to make friends, better sleep, healthy weight, become fitter, and healthy bones. And when we're thinking of our physical health, that covers a lot of it. But when we think of our psychological health, a lot of that feeds into psychological well-being. So having a nice sleep pattern, the ability to make friends and have social networks, having more energy, so you feel that you can achieve more and you have that energy to do that. But also then becoming fitter and feeling having a healthy weight also then feeds into psychological well-being. And I suppose more specific benefits then for a person with additional needs is that increased ability to engage in community life. So you're being part of a sports club, for example, part of the local GAA club maybe, and that naturally brings you into contact with people within your own community, who again then can open up other avenues within that community that increases your ability then to engage in other aspects of community life, such as volunteering, the school community, and just different community events that may take place. Improves the functional coordination of a person. So again, that could be physical, in terms of functional, so physical everyday tasks could be improved. Fine motor skills, gross motor skills, balance, coordination. Again, that can be achieved through physical activity and also sport. Increased independence, and again, it's a huge thing for children with additional needs. And I presume a lot of you are parents, and I think if that independence was gained through sport and physical activity, and it gave you that confidence that you could you feel that your child feels safe and has having a level of independence, I think that's really important if we can achieve that through sport. Increased muscular strength and endurance, social inclusion, improved concentration, and improved behavioural skills. And there's a real correlation between a child who's active and their concentration levels within school and their behavioural patterns within school as well can be really improved through physical activity, and particularly a good experience through PE as well. Teachers would obviously feed back to us that they could see a real improvement in concentration and behaviour when the children were provided with a positive PE experience. I suppose the typical PE or the physical activity pyramid that we're looking at, and again, we're advising children to be active 5 days a week for a minimum of 60 minutes if possible. Let me know for parents down to individual need as well, but we would like to see a pattern of 2 to 5 or everyday activity if possible, but a minimum of 2 to 5. And like physical activity could be brought into every kind of routine during the day. So things like going out for a walk as a family, possibly building some housework into that routine, gardening, particularly this time of year, it's easier to get out into the garden. And other things like, really just going out and playing games in the garden, everyday routine activities that don't take a lot of planning and naturally happen as the day goes on. Then specific exercises that might be useful then would be swimming, dancing, gym, ball games, hiking, and cycling. And there will be others that maybe your child has a particular interest in that aren't on that list, but they may like to engage in as well. And we'll show you later where they could find that opportunity. And I suppose the top of the pyramid is areas that we probably need to cut down in general. I'm speaking probably for myself. During COVID, I've watched a lot more television. I don't have a computer, but I spend a lot of time on a laptop. And it's trying to reduce that time. It is important maybe at the end of the day to include some of that time, but not to reduce it as much as possible and focus more on activities that raise heart rate and provide a physical experience. So this part of the presentation, I want to look at just some strategies that may be useful for you. Move forward, some challenges maybe that you maybe are facing already, but you may come across maybe in the next few months as well. And then finally, then some points to consider. So maybe when you're choosing some activities, what were maybe the main things to consider when you're doing that? The potential challenges for you, for your child, or for yourself as a parent, some of the concerns you may have, but also for the activity providers, some of the concerns they or challenges they may face. So you'll always have sensory issues related to noise, lighting, touch, and smell, and that can be controlled by the coach or the activity provider more easily in an indoor setting, so that you can more easily control the noise or lighting. Outdoors, that can be particularly more difficult, and again, hard for the coach to maybe control. So just to be aware that would be important. Difficulty socializing or working together as a team. So a person with autism or additional needs may find that difficult. And then it's supposed it's a conversation between you as a parent and the coach to let them know that, and then they can build in some additional adaptations to support that need. There'll be lots of distractions resulting possibly in an inability of the person to focus. So there'll be lots of things happening, balls moving, lots of activity happening. So that may be a difficulty for the person to focus. The need for routine or sameness in a structure that's unpredictable, again, will be difficult to control. And again, has to be aware of that and maybe to prepare the child for that environment. Rely on a lot of verbal coaching. A lot of coaches, that would be the way they would have been taught to coach. They would have a lot of verbal instruction. And again, that may not be the best approach for all children. So it's up to the coach then to provide maybe a visual cue or provide some demonstration that would work better than verbal communication. There will be lots of physical stressors, and there will be close contact. Maybe not so much now due to COVID, but in general, in sport, there will be a lot of touch, and particularly sports that would be invasion. So you're looking at Gaelic football, soccer, basketball, for example. There will be intentional tackling there, but some unintentional touching as well, which may be a stressor for a child. Difficulty then with coordination. So fine and gross motor skills, again, that may be difficult for the child to develop those skills quickly or to progress as quickly as the other people within the group. So we would like the coach then to show some differentiation, so they're catering for everyone's needs and providing different options for the child to develop their coordination and motor skills. Difficulty, when a child has difficulty communicating, the coach may have difficulties understanding that. And again, that would be possibly due to the coach's lack of understanding of that person's needs, more so than them not feeling that they want to meet that person's needs. So again, that possibly is a conversation between the coach and a parent or a guardian to develop a communication system that works well for that child. And then there may be a frustration or a meltdown from the person due to the coach's inability or their teammates' inability to identify high levels of stress. And again, that may be a conversation between the coach and the other players. Strategies that might be allow that to be overcome. I want to look at some strategies now that may be useful for you within the home or to share with activity providers. And the first one's the use of prompts. And a prompt is used to elicit a response from the child that gets the actions then that you require. And then you gradually reduce that as the actions become more automatic, or they become less stressed. They could be verbal cues, or they could be visual. Visual, probably in my experience of working with children with autism, probably works better. So the use of pictures and social stories, having a schedule developed, have use of video and the written word as well to provide demonstration. You may also, again, coaches may feel confident to do this, and I would encourage this where possible, again, if required, use some kinetic kind of feel or touch that you're moving the children's arm or actions in the way that you feel, and you're providing that prompt for them, a bit of muscle memory. So for example, they're extending the child's arm to catch the ball. So they feel how that action should be for them, and then gradually then they should be able to extend their arm automatically, and the prompt is reduced. And then modeling the activity, again, coaches and yourselves as parents, again, this works really well. So demonstrate the activity in its entirety. So this is a whole approach. So you demonstrate the activity in a whole, so a skill, for example, it could be a tennis forearm, for example, and then you break that down into the component parts. So for example, you might work on foot position, you might work on how to connect with the ball, and then the follow through might be the final part of that skill. And again, it's having the patience to work through that over a number of sessions or a period of time. Again, that skill becomes automatic. The important thing then to finish on is reinforce that success. So, reinforcing when they've done something really well and praising that, and then gradually, as the child becomes more proficient, then to fade that out as time goes on. Another good technique is the use of incidental teaching. So again, this is quite a good technique to use in the home, where physical activity can be built into other aspects of the home life. For example, throwing and catching, for example, out in the garden. And it could be used within a school setting as well, across curricular. So how can you build a maths lesson into a physical activity session? So easily to do that is maybe count the number of laps a person has ran, successful catches they've had, throws they've made, jumps they've taken. And things like measuring the distance that they've jumped, the distance that they've thrown something. So trying to build those teaching points and physical activity into areas of maybe interest for that child as well. So they might be interested in maths, might be a real special interest for them. They enjoy counting, they enjoy distance, they enjoy being outside through nature, be scavengers or a nature walk where they're identifying different parts of nature. Can build that physical activity into their special interest. And so how to develop those activities with others and promoting that through social interaction. So doing it within a group. And then you can develop concepts of size, shape, rules. And again, that can be all explored within school or within the home. So that can be outdoors in the garden or indoors, maybe through kitchen utensils or some safe pieces of equipment within the home. And I suppose that the body awareness piece of it, particularly for younger children, then can be really, really powerful with this, and being aware of their body parts and how they work, how they change direction, and how that feels to them. So how does it feel when they become sweaty? How does it feel when their body is working impaired? They feel out of breath. Those type of incidental things can happen as well. Pivotal response as well. And again, I know probably some of the questions will be around motivation for children to engage in sport and physical activity. I think this is one of the key things that we can look at. And I suppose it's probably looking at self-regulation, but also then their special interests. So you can see the example on the top of the screen there. The child enjoys water, so they will run, so they can have a shower or a bath afterwards, so they'll get a little bit sweaty. So the motivation or the incentive for that child to engage in physical activity is the thought of a bath or a shower afterwards. I would have worked with a lot of children in school, particularly when I was working within the GA, and they would have identified a lot of special interests. And I can remember a child was really interested in airplanes, another child really interested in lorries. So all the movement activities that we developed with them, they used their imagination and they moved around like an airplane or a lorry. That worked for them, their special interest, and that was their motivation to move, because they felt then that they were moving within their special interest. And also for me, allowed me to show an interest in them as a person and to get buy-in and I suppose trust between me and them, that I was taking an interest in their special interest, and they were able to then see that I had a level of care for them. I focus on behaviors like self-regulation, and then the motivation to provide widespread movements and positive changes. And then you'll find that just targets other areas of function that aren't, that maybe you haven't targeted, but happen automatically as well through movement. And it could involve a response to multiple cues. So running outside, you're promoting looking and seeing around, so scanning the space. You're hearing noise of maybe cars or animals or different people within a group, the smells and the instructions that they're taking as well. And then that social interaction piece then as well, can they do it with the body? Can they do it with you as a parent maybe as their body? And I think one of the most powerful things that I would encourage you all to think, particularly if you're a parent, is to involve yourself within the game as well, or yourself within the activity, to make yourself fun as much as you can. So the activity should be more fun with you in it than with you out of it. So again, that shows a really good role model example, but then it gives you that connection between yourself and the child as well. And they see physical activity, you taking part in physical activity, they're probably more likely to engage in it as well. And lastly, the TEACCH method. Again, we're looking at social stories here, a structured environment of visual schedules. This could be a physical activity schedule, or it could be a day schedule, or it could be just a schedule for that session. And it requires the parents to be actively involved in that as well, to explain the schedule and also to possibly mirror it as well. The physical environment then, so if it's within your own home or within a coaching session, The obstacle course, for example, there, everything would be clearly set up and marked. So that could be color coordinated, labeled, picture instructions. So the child has a clear vision of what they're going to take part in. And then the visual schedules, which I'll touch on later through a social story, maybe like jumping into the car, driving to the park, a picture of them kicking a football, having a picnic afterwards, and then returning home. Then possible work schedule then would be to take the ball from the car. So they're physically taking that ball. They're going to place it on the ground. They're going to swing the right foot. They're going to kick the ball, and they're going to score a goal. And I suppose the key to that method then again is having that routine. So the activity may change, but the routine generally would stay the same. And that's within the home. So take place at the same time, roughly per day, the same length of time, and the routine of getting dressed and the start and finish of the session would look quite similar as well. So some points to consider when choosing some activities is to really consider the individual interests of the person. So what sports are they interested in, or activities, and what strengths they have. So what strengths could you really take advantage of within a sport and physical activity setting? And well, we as an organization in Cara, we always advocate that the child has a choice. So it's not saying that you must do this. The child has the choice of what activity they want to take part in. Some reasons, so it's not really simple for them. That may not be a good choice, but at least they have the choice of a number of activities that they hopefully will enjoy. Particularly for younger children, so children maybe for age 5 to 10, 11, 12, it would be important to ensure the activities are age appropriate. So they're developing skills at an age that is appropriate to them, but also more importantly, I suppose they're safe within the environment as well, that they're not being exposed to danger physically or in other ways in terms of being stressed out psychologically as well. What peer interests are in the community? So a lot of people obviously come from rural communities. The interests maybe in some of those communities, maybe a GA club, possibly a park run within the local area. So it's maybe to find out within your local community, what are the interests in the community and what are the opportunities in that local community as well. And to maybe have the conversation with community leaders or clubs within the area to see what options they have for you as a parent of a child with additional needs. Also, what are your interests as parents? And I think this is really key. If you're interested, so for example, if you're a really good recreational runner and you enjoy park run, can you include your child within that? Do you enjoy cycling? Include your child within that activity as well. I think that's really, really, really powerful if you can do that as a family unit, that physical activity becomes a family activity. And again, it's within a safe environment within the family circle. And I think that's, if you can build your own interest as a parent into the activity of your child, I think that's really important. And again, the social and cognitive demands of the activity, you obviously know your children really well, and you know the level of tolerance and comprehension they will have within an activity. So it's understanding and choosing the right activity that would be your child would tolerate the stresses involved in that. A lot of sport, particularly for younger children, is non-competitive, which is really good. But as you get older, then competition starts to become something that particularly coaches would focus on a little bit more. So again, that can be difficult for children to deal with, and a lot of cooperation, I suppose, in team sports and activities again can be difficult. So consider how that can be developed as well. And then I suppose a lot of programs may be something you may do for a limited period of time, particularly during the summer where you may have more time and the evenings are longer. But to bear in mind, then, can you continue that through the winter, or is it something you continue on an ongoing basis? So maybe to match your expectations of, can you keep it going over a long period of time with reality? So picking something that would be easy to keep going on an ongoing basis. The next part of the webinar, I want to focus on where you could find some local opportunities, and particularly focus on the local sports partnerships within Ireland. And luckily within those sports partnerships at the moment, we have a sport inclusion disability officer within each of them. So there's 29 local sports partnerships within Ireland, and each of those partnerships have a dedicated officer whose role is pan-disability, and they develop local programs and local links with clubs provide opportunities for children and adults with additional needs. So that could be children with physical, sensory, intellectual, all disabilities. So that's the first time that's happened in Ireland, and I think it's a really good opportunity for you guys to find out about them, but also to engage in the programs that they're delivering. And they've continued to deliver them right throughout COVID through an online basis, and they're beginning to come back into face-to-face delivery now in the next few weeks, which again, I'll touch on some of the programs that they're planning to deliver, and then I'll provide you with the contact details for them as well. To give you an idea of some of the work that they do, so what they've done in 2019. So they engaged with nearly 470,000 people across the country. And the target groups that they work with are people in disadvantaged areas, older adults, young people, people with disabilities, women and girls, ethnic minorities, and people who are unemployed. So they develop a number of different programs, and they're right throughout the country, in every country or every county in Ireland, which is fantastic. In terms of supporting people with disabilities, for the first time now we have that dedicated officer. And last year in 2018, they worked with 24,000 people with disabilities, and they provided 22,600 training education opportunities for people who are providing opportunities for children with additional needs. That 24,000 is probably a little low. Not what is identified having a disability, so you'd probably imagine that figure is probably closer to 30,000. And again, would have probably increased that through 2020, but has been curtailed, I suppose, due to COVID as well. Give you an idea of some of the programs that they've delivered recently. So the example on the left there is Kildare Sports Partnership, and they would have delivered an online home Olympics during the summer. And again, this was targeting children with additional needs. And so they were at the mini Paralympic Games. So they would have, and then the children, along with their parents, would have gone and done that in their home environment, using equipment and pieces of household items that you would find in every house. And it's really, really powerful. And they had a medal ceremony actually on Monday, which was really emotional actually, because you could see the impact that it had on the child, but also on their parents, and really, really nice stories that came out of it as well. And a lot of the children would have been inactive prior to taking part in the Olympic Games, and you could see how keen they are to engage in physical activity beyond that. So that one example, I suppose. The other one on the right hand side was more around fitness and inclusive home workouts. And again, this was targeting children, but more adults as well. And this was delivered through Zoom during May and June. And again, looking at activities that were easy to do at home, so didn't use a lot of equipment, but were functional activities that provided a physical activity, but also then had functional benefits for the people taking part. And it was pan disability, so all needs catered for. I'm going to share just two examples that are coming up in the next few weeks. Again, I could have spent maybe 2 or 3 hours going through all of the sports partnerships. They developed numerous programs that would be similar to these examples here. So the example on the left-hand side is surfing for children with autism. So this was through Mayo Sports Partnership and the surf school down in Mayo. And again, this was specific for children with autism. So reduced numbers, I think the maximum number was 10. And again, they would have worked with these children for a number of weeks prior to that week as well. And then the activity runs over a 4-week program. All the equipment would provide activities for the local sports partnership are delivered at a reduced cost. So that would be a reduced cost for the end user. So for you guys as parents, it's generally a minimal cost. So I'm not sure what the cost of the surfing program was, but I'd imagine it was probably €5 per session or something similar to that. The example then on the right-hand side is the Inclusive Cool Camp, which is a GAA camp in Cara. So they would have developed this last year for the first time, actually, and again, they're running it this year. That would be in partnership with the GAA, local sports partnership, and Carlow GAA as well. And this, again, is €40 for the week, and the children receive all the equipment and the clothing that families don't even go to a cool camp. All the coaches will be specifically trained through Cara, and they would have an experience of working with children with additional needs as well. So really positive feedback from it last year, and I'm sure it'll be quite similar to this year. As I said earlier, I could have shared a lot of the same stories with you, and I know we're tight for time. So this is across the board in every county in Ireland. There'll be similar programs taking place. But I think it's a really excellent opportunity for you to engage with your local sports partnership. I'm going to share a video with you to give you a bit of a flavour of what one of the events in Kildare looked like. So this was their Sportability Day in 2019. All sports within Kildare to come together and let the children sample what went on. And I'll give you a bit of an idea of what they do.
Kildare Sports Partnership were delighted to host today's Kildare Sportsability Day. It was fantastic to have clubs from all around the county and all promoting disability sport and inclusion in Kildare and beyond. We really had a fantastic range of activities and information stands for people who were able to get information on activities in their community. We're delighted that the event was part of the European Week of Sport programme, and we really appreciate the support of Sport Ireland and all the partners involved.
Okay, so hopefully I will give you a little bit of flavour of that type of day, and again, an opportunity to engage with your partnerships through that. What I want to go through now is maybe some examples of suitable activities, focusing on those key areas on the screen there. So fine motor skills and some examples of other activities. Now, obviously we're limited with time, and I could spend a lot of time going through some of the examples that we could have. What I will do at the end is share my contact details with you through email or other Instagram and stuff like that you can make contact with me, that I will share more resources with you at a later date. So when we're talking about fine motor skills, we're referring now to the coordinated and controlled movements of small muscles, so particularly the hands and fingers. So picking up small objects like a pen, a needle, threading things through a small space, or picking up coins and putting them into a small space as well. So those fine motor skills, and again important for school, I suppose, in terms of reading, writing, and picking up counters and things that you may do within a classroom. The thing, I suppose, an essential component of that, and it can be done in a number of ways, is that pinch grasp. So that grasp that you're pinching something and holding on to it tight. So that'd be your thumb and your index and first finger. A number of ways you can do that through putty or squeeze balls or small objects they're nice and easy to grip. The other thing to look at then when we're thinking of fine motor skills is then is control. So being able to control that part of your body so you remain controlled and stable, but also on the shoulder strength and the stability within that. Again, they would aid the pinch grasp and make that a little bit easier. So what we're looking at here, and I will share these with you if you wish, if you make contact with me later, is core strength exercises. So those core strength, so the things like Superman exercise, where you have 4 points on the ground, so your toes and your knees, and you're maintaining that position in a plank position, and then where you're developing the back muscles again from a seated position. Another core exercise where the movement, when we talk about core, we're thinking of our stomach, lower back, and hips as well. Strength around the shoulder then, and again we're looking at stability exercise if we're doing that. So things like an exercise ball, Swiss ball, maintaining that stable base within that, and shoulder strength. Having the function to lift your arm above your head, hold something that's at a moderate weight as well. They would all aid that pinch grasp and that stability within the core. Hand strength, again, using putty, elastic bands possibly as well, the pinch grasp and the grip strength. And things like the bead in there, I think that's a really good exercise to do, particularly within the home. And I'm sure a lot of you are doing that type of thing as well. I do have quite a lot of resources in all of those areas that I'm happy to share with you afterwards as well. Our skills, and we're looking at the larger muscles within the body and moving those muscles in a coordinated way with control as well. So particularly within if we're developing sports skills, that's moving the body parts that are required for that skill in a coordinated way, also in the right order. So we're looking there at core strength, our balance, maintaining our balance when we're moving, particularly from left to right or forwards and backwards. What can be neglected then is the coordination on both sides of the body. And it's a big regret of mine that I didn't develop this at a younger age. My skills are all on the right-hand side of my body. So if I'm throwing something, it's on the right-hand side. If I'm kicking a ball, it's on my right-hand side. My left side of my body was underdeveloped through just didn't do it at a young age. So I missed that opportunity to develop that coordination on that side. So where possible, try to do activities that develop both sides of the body. So if you're doing a throwing activity, try to ensure that that is performing both sides of the body. And you're moving left and right, pushing off left and right as well. Other things that we're looking at then is we're running, jumping, skipping, hopping, and ball games. And I suppose the key to gross motor skills, they're developed through repetition. And again, that can be a good thing when it's done in a fun environment. So the key to it is repetition, but also doing it in a way that's enjoyable. So maybe involving yourself within that, but also in development into a game. The skills being developed, but the person maybe doesn't really see or not see, but they don't feel that they're being tired or they're enjoying what they're doing, so they're developing it in an enjoyable experience for them. And again, I would have a lot of kind of resources there that we can share with you to develop those skills. So for examples there, we're looking at like wheelbarrow walks, push and pull games, so the things like tug of war, things like that, animal walks, obstacle courses. And again, you can do that in your back garden if you've got the space, using whatever you have. All skills, so we're catching, throwing, striking. Coordination, so again, that's moving the body parts in the right order. So kicking, racket skills, those type of games. Playground games, so the example on the picture, I think a playground, if it's suitable for your child and it's an environment that's suitable for them, I think they're a really, really great place to develop all those areas of coordination and gross motor skills. So you're going to be climbing, you're going to be sliding, there's going to be balance there. Possibly if it's busy, there's going to be turn taking as well. So there's the other elements to it as well. So where possible, I think to engage in those and spend maybe 30 minutes trying to, in different parts of that playground would be really good. And particularly when the child goes back to school, if they're in an environment in a school where they have a place like similar to what the picture is, I think that's a really good environment there for developing gross motor skills. And back to the core strengthening exercises. Again, all of these skills can be built into the core, and they kind of aid the body movement, then try to create stability for balance and coordination activities as well. Other activities to make note of on the left hand side, that is an example from Longford Sports Partnership, and the reason I put it up there is it's a recreation activity that a family could do. It's going for a walk on a scavenger hunt to find some bugs, grass, stones, clouds, for example, and ticking those off. It's ensuring the child, has been physically active, but they're also learning through that, and they're being more conscious of the environment around them as well. Other things like couch to 2K, for example, and marking that off every day, in terms of distance as well, are really, really some good activities. Some activities that we have on the Cara website, so we developed quite a lot of home exercise circuits that last 10 minutes during COVID. So we developed, I think it was 8 or 9 weeks of it. So if you visit our website, you see a number of them. It's all basic movements that you could do as a family as well, so a parent and a child together. Other things we would have done would have been dance, aerobics, boxercise was one of them. And again, they're another option for you that doesn't require equipment, but it can be done easily within the home. The movements aren't too difficult, but would have a good physical response within the person as well. Finally, what I want to touch on is just some supports for coaches and activity providers that might be useful for them to provide a positive experience for a child with additional needs. So we're going to look at some models: the Inclusion Passport, some social stories that are powerful, some training education options, and then some tips that might be useful as well. So the tree model is a coaching model. So this model can be used to adapt an activity or a sports session. So we're looking at the that's teaching style. So the coach adapts their teaching style. So they may use visual cues rather than verbal communication, for example. They may use simplified language to get their message across. They may modify the rules. So depending on what game it is, it might be a larger space, a smaller space, a two-touch rule, or whatever it may be. The equipment then, using the equipment that's most suitable for the group. So again, giving the person within reason a choice of the equipment that they want to use as well. So that might be replacing a ball with a beanbag, for example, having a foam javelin, maybe as a throwing activity rather than a ball. Then the environment, then again, that can be very important in terms of sensory response. So limiting the noise, the surface, the light, and things like that, again, can be difficult to organize. Coach should conscious of it, and they may only need to change one of those things. They may not need to change them all. An example of that then in practice, again, was difficult to look at from a Cara, but in terms of the teaching style there, you can see lots of children there with needs. So again, the teaching style would change. The rules of the game, you can see two different variations of the Rounders game on the screen. So the top, the traditional format of it, on the bottom then is a simplified version of it as well. The equipment is different, so there's equipment choices there. And then the environment is different as well, so a larger space and a smaller space. The inclusion continuum then, so this again can be used in any context within inclusion. So it runs on a scale from a fully integrated activity where the child takes part in the activity like everyone else and there's no modifications to the activity. And that would be based on their choice, firstly, but also based on their needs. And then it goes through fully segregated. So that would be segregated within their own peer group, but they may come together then at the end into a wider group. And then it runs in between them. So a parallel activity, they may be doing the same activity as another group, but they're doing within their own peer group. So an example of that may be the marathon, where the runners go off first, the wheelchair racers go off first, and then the runners come behind. They're doing the same activity, but they're doing it within their own groups and just using different equipment to achieve that task. And the last thing I want to touch on is reverse integration. And I think this is really powerful, and I think it's something that sports clubs could do a lot more of, is that the child with a disability, their peers or their brothers or sisters or become involved in that activity as well. And we would have seen that quite a lot through IWA activities where junior wheelchair clubs, their brothers and sisters would also get involved in that club as well. And it's a really positive experience for them. And it may in some cases be the only opportunity that child has an opportunity to play in the same environment as their brother and sister and to enjoy the activities that they enjoy. A really good tool, and I think AsIAm are involved in the development of this passport as well. And it's a really, really great information tool and really source of information for a coach or an activity provider. It provides information on the child of their likes and dislikes, so the way they like to communicate. If they want to know more information, where they need to go for that, and then their sensory restrictions, so light, noise, touch, smell, taste, their body awareness, movements, and what their preferences are there. So if they're undersensitive or oversensitive to those things, and then what they find difficult. So is balance and coordination difficult for them? And really, what that arms the coach with is the knowledge of what they need to do to ensure that child or person has a positive experience. The last couple of pages of it then. Their needs may make it difficult for them in some areas. So possibly some examples there, they may not be able to read body language, noisy places are stressful. So again, if the coach is aware of these things, it makes it easier for them to provide that positive experience or make the adaptations that are useful. And from my own experience and from speaking to parents of children with additional needs, sometimes there's a fear there to let the coach know that my child has some needs that you should be aware of. Possibly because they're maybe fearful that the coach may exclude them, or they're not comfortable from disclosing that information. I can only speak from my own experience as a coach. I really like to know that information first, because I would like to provide that positive experience for your child. And I would hazard a guess that 99% of coaches would be of the same opinion, that they would like to have that information prior to your child coming down, so that they know how best to include them. That resource is available through the Cara Centre website, through our resource section, which I'll share the details with you in a minute. Some examples of social, I'm sure all of you have seen social stories before, or you've used them. But just to give you some examples here, so for the one on the left hand side, that may be a typical day for a person with autism or additional needs. Examples pictorially of what they need to do during that day. And for a coach or an activity provider, it's given the person with the additional need maybe the choice then on the right hand side. So they prefer to play football today, play cricket, for example, or take part in athletics. And I was going to share this example with you. So this was a story of United. And this is only a couple of, it goes on for maybe 8 pages. So these are screenshots of 3 pages of it. And they really have a really good example of the storyboard. So the storyboard starts at the entrance to the grounds. You can see there. So this is the entrance to the football ground. So it gives the person the instructions to go through the gates when to play, if you want to play soccer for East Meath United. And then they show the next page then is the picture of the actual pitch that the person may use. So information that it's an all-weather pitch. You'll meet your coaches there and the helpers. You'll also meet the other boys and girls. And they will be called your teammates. And then you will wear runners or football boots in to play. And then a specific activity, how it starts and stops, and then how the session finishes as well. Again, I'm happy to share that example with you. I think it's a really good example, and it's something that sports clubs are starting to adopt that we're aware of, but again, it can be adopted quite a lot more as well. To give you some example of further education options or training that may be of interest, we do deliver quite a lot of courses, and we're starting to bring some of these online. I suppose the one that may be of interest for you now at the minute would be the Autism and Sport course, which we're holding online in a few weeks. That's an introductory course for coaches, SNAs, and different activity providers around the basics of autism, and develop some practical strategies that children with autism or people in general with autism can be included in sport and physical activity. That would be a 2-hour webinar style course delivered online. So that's really, really good. And I suppose it would have been one of our most popular courses prior to the current restrictions. So we're really excited that we can do that now online. Some of the other ones then we have inclusive fitness training. So that's targeting the leisure industry. Disability awareness training for national governing bodies. Disability inclusion training. Again, that'll be a 6-hour course. So we don't have that online at the minute, but it's something that we're currently working on. And lastly, then is sport inclusion, disability awareness webinar. The other courses there are probably difficult to bring online, so we're hopeful that we'll be able to do that early 2021 to bring that back to a traditional format. Lastly, just some tips for developing activities. So around the communication, just to be clear, concise, and direct where possible. Where possible, then try to reduce distractions and develop a low arousal environment. And that hopefully would support a reduction in anxiety and aid concentration. Be mindful of sensory differences and adapt sessions when required. So that goes back to the passport. Like that's where you get that information, and I suppose your adaptations come from that then. Be conscious then that people may be visual learners, and always try to accompany instruction with illustration and visual aids where possible. I suppose to give my own experience with that was engage in the special interests as a means of incentive or feedback. I think that's really powerful if anyone, a parent or an activity provider could do that and really hone in on that and use that to your advantage. Be conscious that they may have a limited sense of danger, pain as well. So have clear boundaries and clear rules as well. I think that next point there is really important. So if they're in doubt, so they're unsure about something in relation to providing the experience for the child, ask the parent, ask somebody who's maybe worked successfully with that child before. Maybe that's their school teacher or their SNA. So ask those questions and get that information that you require to ensure you're providing that positive experience. Have a consistent structure if possible. And I like this last piece as well, and a lot of the sport inclusion disability officers do this really well, is providing a free space where the child can go and just feel, if they need some time to themselves, or they feel overwhelmed, that they can go and play with some equipment, or just calm themselves back down and reintegrate them back into the activity again. So again, that's something really definitely to consider when planning this session. I want to finish with this video. So what you're going to see here is a video of Jason Smith. So Jason Smith is the fastest Paralympian in the world, and would have had multiple world records in Paralympic Games. He has a visual impairment. And what Jason's going to share here in a 2-minute clip is the impact of being included within sport and physical activity on his life, and the opportunities of this.
But my teacher, a lady by the name of Liz McGuire, came to me and said, "Jason, you could be a good athlete. Would you be interested in going to an athletics club, an athletics coach, somewhere close by, if I was able to get you the information?" For me, that was an incredible start of a journey, because getting involved started me on the process of learning to accept me with my disability. Sport was the vehicle that I was able to do so, believing that there are no limits, believing that there are no boundaries, believing that anything is possible in anything I do in life. That is part of, and one of the many reasons why I will be forever grateful for my school teacher. She created an opportunity that changed my life in more ways than I could ever imagine. For me, that is the importance of inclusion for people with disabilities in sport and physical activity. It can change their lives in incredible ways. Sport can be more inclusive, that the awareness of sport and inclusion can be increased for people with physical or with any disability. And I want to finish by encouraging each of you to do the very same in whatever capacity you can, because it makes a huge difference. Thank you.
Okay, guys, so that really powerful message from Jason there. I know he's a high-performance athlete, which, he's in a minority of people. But the powerful message for me there is the conversation that he had with his teacher, and the conversation where that led him to now where he is as a performance athlete. Those conversations can happen through the local sports partnerships and your sport inclusion disability officer, because they're aware of all the local opportunities that are available for your child, and they'll move earth and everything. They'll do everything possible for you to make that happen at whatever level your child wants to engage in sport and physical activity at. What I want to provide you with now is some further information. Some of you, I'm sure, are aware of Susan Crawford. So Susan and has done a lot of research and has provided quite a lot of resources in the area of sport and physical activity for children with autism. And I've just listed 3 of the resources that she's developed, and I would really encourage you to look at those closely, and particularly the one in the middle, if you're a parent of a child with disability. And really, you'll get some really good resources there. The other resources that I want you to possibly look at as well as the resources within our own website, so caracenter.ie /fact sheets. And again, you'll find loads of information there. And actually this week we just on return to sport and physical activity for people with additional needs. That might be a useful thing for you to be aware of as well. And for your local sports partnership contacts, the easiest way to do that is through the Sport Ireland website, or contact me directly. So I'm going to share my email address with you now as well. or just Google Local Sports Partnerships Ireland, and that will come up as well. And again, I can't encourage you enough to engage with those sports partnerships. My own contact details, so my email address, odoherty@caracentre.ie, my mobile number. That's my work phone, so please feel free to contact me at any stage if you want to have a conversation after today. I'm happy to take a call. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram at the handles below there. I tend to share quite a lot of things on Twitter, particularly. Instagram not as much, but that's one of the things that I'm going to work on in the next few months. So feel free to contact me through any of those avenues. As I said earlier, some of the resources that I have and I didn't share with you tonight, I would happily do that through email or however you want to contact me in the next few weeks. So feel free to do that at any stage, and I'll find something useful for you. Lastly, I just want to thank you for your time. I'm aware I've gone slightly over time there, so apologies for that. Hopefully it was something that was useful for you. I enjoyed connecting with you, and I really enjoy Adam. I've connected quite a lot with Adam in the last few months through the SuperValu program. So thank you for the opportunity to speak to you, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have now as well.
Odhrán, thank you so much. I know I certainly learned a lot, certainly in particular. I know in this job, sometimes the greatest difficulty is getting people out the information of all the different things that are happening on the ground. And I think your presentation really brought that together, from the very practical things parents and tutors and coaches can do to engage children in physical activity, through to finding the kind of wealth of resources and activities that are out there as well for people to tap into. So we really appreciate it. There's lots of positive feedback coming in, which is much appreciated. And also a couple of people have already asked about maybe if they missed a part of the webinar, or if they wanted to share this with other colleagues, how could they do it? So the webinar is recorded, and in the next couple of days it will be uploaded to the AsIAm YouTube channel. So you'll be able to watch Odhrán every night if you want to touch base with some of these key messages. A couple of questions have come through over the course of the session that I might just put to you, if that's okay, Odhrán.
Yeah, no problem.
A couple of came through just about what online resources were out there, or how would you adapt activities for specific children. But I think you've covered a lot of that, and also have kindly shared your details. But there's two questions that just particularly jump out that I think I'd love to put to you. One was just the whole area of, you spoke a lot during your presentation about how there's lots of clubs that have taken your training, that have inclusive offerings for children. But maybe one of the challenges on the ground sometimes can be it's word of mouth. So you might hear from another parent that there's a club that's particularly good in this area, but it's kind of potluck. And one parent wants to know, is there any kind of list available on a county basis on clubs that have accessed the training or that have an inclusive offering?
Yeah, we do that in a number of ways, Adam, and it's a good point. It can be difficult to keep on top of that, because not all clubs engage with Cara, not all clubs engage with the local sport partnership, so it can be difficult to keep track of it. One of the key things that we do as an organisation, and it's through the Sport Inclusion Disability Charter, so we'd be aware of, there's 400 people or 400 organisations who've signed that, and there's over 300 clubs who have signed that. So we'd be aware of those clubs and the offerings that they're having or developing, and we'd be quite sure that they're developing something positive across all inclusive practice. In terms of the 5 pillars, one of the key things of it would be promotion. That's the final pillar of it, and as you're saying there, that's something that can be overlooked quite a lot by clubs, particularly advertising activities in a way that would be suitable for a person or a parent of a child with additional needs. So having the right information within it, even smaller things like having imagery that would reflect what the activity looks like. You may see imagery of maybe a high performance athlete or somebody who's well known, but that doesn't really reflect on the activity. That's one of the things that we encourage them to ensure that their imagery reflects the content of what they're going to deliver. In terms of finding out where those activities are, the best point, and I suppose I'm harbouring the point here a lot, is to go directly to your local sports partnership, because they would have a club directory within their county, and they would have a list of all the clubs and the type of activities, and I suppose the level of training that their coaches would have received as well. Or come directly to Cara, and again we would have a list of clubs and organisations who we would have been aware of through the charter, who have signed the charter, but also then who would have completed the autism and sport training. We have a list of I'm not sure how many. We've delivered over 150 of those now, I would say.
Wow.
So we would have a list of all those people who've completed that and what organisation they came from as well. So obviously there's more room there. We're only touching the surface in terms of clubs there, and there's a lot of clubs who maybe haven't engaged with us that are probably developing a good product as such.
No, I think that's really helpful.
If you want to narrow it down, there'd be local sports partnerships, and then us directly would be the best point of contact.
And I think that's really helpful, because I think even, certainly until I would have engaged with yourselves, maybe I wouldn't have even been aware of local sports partnerships and the role they have in this area. So I think even those 2 ports of call would hopefully be very helpful for the parent concerned. The next 2 questions are interesting because they are distinct questions, but they're linked, and I think they're just quite interesting. And that is really just in relation to the whole area of anxiety. And there's 2 maybe specifics that we might touch on, and I might jump in on one of them as well. A particular child who maybe at the moment is experiencing a lot of anxiety, particularly around other children. And I'm guessing part of that might be to do with COVID-19 and maybe the fears around that. But one of the things is the person finds it very difficult to engage in competitive team sports. They find that quite stressful. Would you have any tips or guidance around how you can overcome that and engaging someone in physical activity?
Yeah, I suppose it would be useful to know the age of the child, possibly. The reason I said I probably touched it on the presentation, there's a clear, as a child becomes kind of 11, 12, 13 onwards up into their teenage years, there's a huge focus then on competitive sport.
Yeah.
From age 5 to 12, it's more around fundamental movement skills, development of coordination. So that's a non-competitive environment, but there is a clear change in as the child gets older. To give the parents some tips there, it's to find out, what is the interest of the child. Do they want to take part in the sport? Do they really want to take part in the activity that is competitive, or are they more comfortable, or have they got a more positive experience in a non-competitive sport? And it's maybe looking at that first to see, do they really enjoy that activity, and are they getting a lot out of it? If, for example, I'm presuming it's a competitive sport that they want to take part in, sport, like football or soccer.
The parent has just clarified actually there that the child is 10 and that all his friends would be involved in kind of competitive sport. Yeah.
So that from 10 onwards would be I suppose it's a conversation with the club and the coaches involved then as well. And it's the environment that the coach creates, and the motivation for coaches can be funny, like depending on what they're internally, like some of them are really motivated by winning. Some coaches are motivated by the development of their athletes and the development of the experience more so than winning games. So it's the environment that the coach creates, and that can be separate to the club. So the club, you would like in an ideal situation that the club has that ethos as well, but it can be down to an individual coach, good or bad. So it's having that conversation with the coach, and maybe the offerings that the coach or the club has as well. Do they only have one team at that age group, or where does that child fit in? So maybe there's a competitive team, and then there's an offering there that's less competitive but still part of the same club. And the other side of it is, like, children of that age are naturally competitive. It's our human nature. But maybe to steer that competitiveness in the right way, are the children motivated by winning the match, or could that be broken down into specific targets for each child within the game? So I'll give an example of Gaelic football. So if the child is a defender, how many blocks can they do during that game, or how many touches of the ball do they get, rather than the outcome of the game? So it's process-based goals rather than the outcome of a game or a season as such. It's a very hard question to answer, to be honest, because I'm not sure of the environment around the club or the team.
I think 2 things that I'd probably just add as well. I think one is that I think particularly the challenge I think a lot of autistic young people face with sport is if the person has a negative first experience in a team environment because the social part, that can really be a turn off for sport and physical activity in general. Certainly feedback we sometimes get is individual sporting pursuits, be it athletics, be it martial arts, they can often be a more positive experience. And of course, the person's still getting the benefit of physical activity. The other thing that I think Odhrán has touched on as well that's really interesting is physical activity, particularly if you have a child who doesn't have an interest in sport at all, doesn't have to be sport-based.
Absolutely.
And if your child has a particular area that they're interested in, one of the things, and in fact, we did a little piece on this for SuperValu during lockdown, you can see it through their website, we did a piece on how can you use the strengths to help a child in an area they find difficult. So whatever your child's interest might be, how could you use that to somehow get the person out and about engaging in physical activity? There are just two other ideas that might be helpful there.
Yeah, I agree. I really agree with your first point there around that negative experience. That can be really, really difficult to overcome, and we have a huge responsibility to ensure that first experience is positive as much as possible. And I think hopefully that's beginning to happen. I think, you know, if you go back a number of years, or 4 or 5 years at least, anyway, I think that there was a lot of negative experience across all, you know, impairment groups. We would have found that, and very, very difficult to overcome, and it takes a lot of support to even bring that person into that environment again. You know, I really concur with that. That positive first experience is crucial.
Totally. And then the other thing that just might be really helpful as well is just to touch on, and I think it goes beyond sport as well, but it is something I'm sure that does come up in a sporting context. So we have a child who, you know, on a Tuesday or Wednesday is really excited about the concept of going to play football on Saturday, really excited about the concept, playing on the team, everything. But maybe come Saturday morning, the child gets so anxious that no amount of preparation, be it a social story, be it visuals, will actually get the child to the point that they'll go to the club and to participate. Don't know if you've any experience that or any ideas on things that might be helpful.
Yeah, I have some experience, not within autism. It's a different. I'll share a story with you in a second. Actually, it's a nice story. I think it is a difficult situation, and I think it requires a lot of patience and resilience as well from the parent. I think this might be right or wrong, but the best approach is maybe to break that down into small pieces and to do it over a number of weeks. So, for example, maybe the first week is maybe to get the child into the car might be a positive step. You know, you may not even leave the house. Like, you might just get them into the car and prepare them that there is a journey to football here, and this is the first. Second week, then maybe building that into the car, then the journey to the pitch, and maybe not, you know, getting out of the car. Or it may get to the situation where they do, and gradually build that up to a stage where the child is ready and, you know, has gone through all the process of, you know, the process that it takes for that child to get to the actual pitch and to engage in that activity. And there's a lot of stakeholders involved in that as well, particularly at the end of it, around the coach, the other players, other parents maybe that are around as well. And it's to ensure that there's communication between yourself as the parent and the coach to make them aware of the situation as well. I think talking about it and communicating outside of your own family networks, that might be the coach or another parent within that group as well, I think could be really good. To let them know about your situation and the processes that you're undertaking as an individual parent, but also then they might be the support network that you require as well at various stages through that journey. Again, that might work for everyone, but that would be probably the way I might look at it. I'll share that story with you, actually. It's the same thing. So I would have worked with a girl when I worked for Disability Sport and I, and she was a very competitive swimmer, good swimmer, age 14, 15. And she had an accident during the summer and her left arm was amputated. And part of the curriculum for when she went back to school was swimming, so she had to re-engage in swimming after her recovery. So this was October, November of the following year. But she wasn't ready. She just wasn't ready to expose her body to the other people in her class. The steps that we took with her were that she came to the pool, she sat up in the gallery and just watched everybody else taking part. Next week then she sat on the pool side, fully clothed, you know, just on the side, seeing what was going on, seeing what was happening. The next stage then was to get her into the changing environment where she, you know, didn't get changed but was in that environment again. The next stage then was we developed, or her parents developed, a fully clothed towel where she didn't have to expose any of her body. She changed on her own. She entered the pool herself, so remained below the water for the whole session, so no part of her body was visible. And followed that stage right up, maybe, and this was up until May of the following year, so a 6-month period, where she was felt comfortable then to re-engage and, you know, for the other people to see how her body is now and to share and change with everyone else as well. So it takes a long time, but it has to be a gradual approach to it as well.
I completely agree with all of those, and it's a really nice analogy. And two things I'd throw in there as well is, I think one of the most important things for autistic people is always exit and withdrawal options. So just as, you know, that idea that the first week we're just going to go to the pitch and we're just going to watch the match, the second week, you might just participate in the warm-up but not in the game, your parent stays with you, that at each of those junctures, there is somewhere the child can go at any stage if they become overwhelmed. So they know that actually if anything becomes too much, there's always that get out of jail option, so that there's never going to be a situation the person feels trapped and has a really overwhelming experience. The other thing that I don't know about it being done in a sporting context, but it works really well sometimes in social clubs and in school environments, is a buddy system. So, is there a child or two on the team who you could get to know outside the sport, who maybe could come over for a play date, and who could then play a role in kind of being the safety net that helps that person start on the teams? They're just two other ideas that would come to mind.
Yeah. The buddy system is quite common in sport, actually, Adam. And it's really powerful, works really well.
Great. Yeah, well, that's brilliant. We really hope that people have found tonight useful. I'm so grateful to Odhrán for sharing his huge knowledge and expertise, and it's very clear from all the comments coming through that people have got a lot out of it, and I know even more people will as they watch it online. I want to thank SuperValu as ever for making this possible, and the Cara Centre for supporting the work that we're trying to do in this area. The other thing is, I know a lot of people will be in this get back to school, get back to routine mode. And one other thing that I just want to remind everyone about tonight is our Bridge Back to School resource. Again, it's produced with the support of SuperValu, which is an amazing, if I can say so myself, 50-page guide that will help you and your child prepare for that return to school in September. It's available in SuperValu stores. It's also available on the AsIAm and SuperValu website. And it does have a section on motor skills and coordination, which touches on some of the themes we've talked about this evening here as well. So thank you all so much for giving your evening. And once again, thanks to Odhrán, and have a nice evening, everybody. Thank you very much.